We've got a load of questions here, some covering things like effectiveness and audience-based buying, some of the topics we've already covered. We've got questions around unified measurement, around programmatic consortiums and alliances, omni-channel marketing, incremental reach, a lot of these areas that we're very familiar with. But we're talking about innovation here. So I decided to give my panel a challenge to start off the affair with. And that challenge is actually based on my background. Not many people know this, but before I worked in TV, this was 12 years ago, I spent 5 years working at a fantasy gaming company. Oh. And by fantasy gaming, I don't mean Dungeons and Dragons. I mean things like fantasy football and fantasy rugby and all of that lot. So I thought we could have fantasy ad tech investor. And with respect to innovation, so I have given all these chaps $1 million fantasy dollars. It was in the post, hope you got it. And they are to invest 1 million of their dollars into a company that can either grow or safeguard TV advertising budgets. And they're going to tell us about this. There was one rule, though. They were not allowed to invest it in their own company or their own area, obviously. So I'd like, if possible, we're going to start off with introductions, and I'd like you to tell us all and tell the audience where you would invest your $1 million. Who wants to go first, maybe?
Should I start? Okay. So my name's Daniel. I work with RTL AdConnect, the international sales house of RTL Group, a company almost nobody knows in the UK, probably, RTL. We're a small company across 12 markets in Europe, serving 160 million viewers per day and about 53 billion on digital. So thanks for the $1 million. It's very kind of you to pay us. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday. McDonald's just spent $300 million to customize your drive-through experience at the McDonald's drive-through. So with 1 million, I'm not sure if I can buy a lunch even with a company that is interesting and will help to grow the future of TV. But what I can say is that from our point of view is that what we see is it's a very fragmented landscape at the moment, right? We see this drive to web, we see companies that try to get the last mile of the customer data, and what we would love to see, or where I would my money down, is definitely someone aligning all the streams and making a measurement possible that leads to a trading that is meaningful for our advertisers. I'm not sure I'm going to get that with 1 million, though. I think for the next panel you need to upgrade your cash pool.
Unified measurement, if we could get there with just $1 million, I'm pretty sure we'd have done it already. But every little helps.
So my million is in there.
Okay, unified measurement, great. Okay, Gert, shall we go to you next?
Yes, Gert Marien from Proximus, the Belgian incumbent telco operator. We're serving television to our customers via TV sets, mobile phones, tablets, and all the things. So we cover the whole spectrum. I'm going to raise the budget to 2 million.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm going to have
invested it wisely.
Yeah. I'm going to raise your budget to 2 million.
Okay.
So on those measurements, but I'm going to add some things. Today we have different touch points with our customers. We have the TV, we have the smartphone, we have tablets, PCs, we have individual devices, we have household devices. One of the big things which I would like to know is who is in front of that television. And that is something I would like to learn. So we really can go there and target in a very good way. Yeah, we have target advertising on all platforms also available. I'll say that. So that's something I would like to add to the measurement tool.
And
2 million.
Yeah, we have 2 million now. So.
Now we have 3.
Yeah. Okay.
And this concept of knowing who is in front of the television, you almost want to know it in a deterministic way, because with every Proximus household.
If possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So that's a really interesting spin on measurement as well. Harry, you're up next.
I am Harry Harcus, potentially the new boy into addressable TV on the panel. Just moved across from digital. right into the center of the action. So for those of you who don't know, Finecast is the addressable TV arm of WPP and Group M. So really at the center of bringing together, the power of TV and the precision of data-driven targeting. So very excited. So, but in answer to the question, I think we're onto a similar tack. At least what I was going to say was something in the area of identity management within TV advertising. So obviously a scalable and secure way of managing that, either for targeting, yes, but also for ad preferences. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be really interesting. The second thing, having looked at the panel, is I might also invest a little bit of that in an executive search firm that's maybe specializes in women in senior roles, because we got a few blokes on the panel.
Yeah, we're always focusing on diversity. No, I think you're right to point that out. So that's ID management, which is another an interesting spin on encompasses measurement and, I guess, you say consent, potentially effectiveness. That is very interesting, and data privacy. Brilliant, thank you. Next up, should we go to Mike, just for consistency?
Yes. Mike Shaw at dataxu. We're a marketing technology platform. So I was going to go, my background is measurement, I was going to go with measurement. There's already 3 million in there, so it seems like the prices are being driven up in the measurement venture capital area. So instead, I'm going to go with a software solution for the next generation of television trading. Because I think as this model changes, as more data is available, as the systems which are being used to plan these new audience-based buys, in addition to, because all of this is about growth, we're not throwing the existing stuff out the window, we're going to need a different type of trading platform that operates on different types of timelines than the way TV does right now. So I'm going to take my million, I'm going to build that and become rich.
And just to be clear, so this is the first deviation from measurement, and did you feel like you could not put your money on measurement because dataxu is very much in that area, or is it that you just think this is a bigger opportunity?
We have a very vested interest in measurement, but I also feel that you shouldn't have there should be a church and state relationship between the traders and the people measuring it. And our platform is a trading platform, and data aggregation trading. There has to be another entity. One of the reasons that Barb, that UCOM, Radar, etc. do an amazing job. There has to be a separation of that. So to my mind, I think I could have invested in measurement, but I do think there's going to be this need for a new thing in the ecosystem. Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, thank you. Well, let's finish things off then with Blair. Please introduce yourself and lay down your $1 million.
Sure. So I'm Blair, TVSquared CTO. And before we go further, I absolutely agree that measurement and buying have to be separate. It doesn't make any sense for them to do the same. So TVSquared helps people do TV better. We work with agencies, we work with media owners, we work with brands in about 70 countries, and we help value media in ways that make sense to the brands. I actually thought €1 million seed wasn't too bad, and you could probably spin up a couple of companies for that. I'm trying to keep it my own area as well. I was thinking, I think everybody upstairs is trying to make the UIs for AVOD and SVOD services better, because they're not great right now. I'm sure some of them are okay, but they're not great. I think there's a lot of benefit, especially for AVOD, if we get that right. So I'd bung some money into that. And then the other thing is probably closer to measurement, which is thinking about ASTC in the US, which is a kind of protocol similar to hybrid TV over here. It's a couple of years away from fruition, but basically it will let you track impressions. And tracking impressions, especially in America with a GDPR environment, means you have data, and with data you can do measurement. So that's kind of where I'd be thinking.
Sorry, to describe your investment in one phrase, therefore you're saying half measurement, or?
I would do 2 companies.
Okay, okay. So half measurement and then
I think so.
The other.
Yeah, and the ATSC isn't measurement so much as data availability, because certainly in the US market there's a huge amount of fragmentation right now, and that technology may well be the method for removing some of that fragmentation.
So it's kind of like trading and accessibility to data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at the moment there's lots of entities. There's set-top box data, there's smart TV data, and I think the last presentation alluded to trying getting the same thing in Europe. But it's tiny percentages. It's 1% of the market, 2% of the market. There needs to be something that covers more of that, so you can get away from, we talk about deterministic, but it's totally probabilistic. and towards something that is actually deterministic.
Yeah. Well, thank you, gentlemen. That's really interesting. I think it's really interesting that there's so much agreement on measurement, and I don't know to what extent that's a cognitive bias or whatever you call it, behavioral economics, because Daniel went first and said measurement. Yeah, it could have been framing. So let me ask you first, why has nobody mentioned audience-based buying? Why do you not think that is going to drive more money to TV or sustain TV advertising?
Well, I think we touched the topic, right? You want to know who's the audience, right? Who's in front of their television. And I think buying audience is great, but first you need to know who is the audience, right?
Yeah.
And we must not confuse the fact that television is a medium that is consumed by more than one person simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
You sit in your living room, you want to know who's watching, right?
Yeah.
So if you start audience buying and you don't have valid data on that, you're going to end up, giving the diaper advertising to the daughter that just watching something else.
So let me posit something. Measurement. Many of you have said measurement, but measurement's not necessarily what's going to bring in more money in the long run. Measurement is actually just the catalyst that opens up everything else. So let's say that we had perfect unified measurement in place. What is the next step? Is it attribution modeling? Is it audience-based buying? Is it automated trading? So I'm putting you guys on the spot here, but...
It's all these things. What we ideally, if we're talking about a fantasy environment, what we should be looking for is goal-based planning, where you say, this is what I'm trying to do with my campaign. I'm trying to launch a product. I'm trying to re-engage lapsed consumers, and what should the campaign look like to achieve that goal? I'm not talking about GRPs and TRPs and whatever else. So yes, measurement, into attribution, into segmentation and targeting, into planning, proof of performance, so the sales side can show the media actually works, and they need that too. So your fantasy environment for me contains all these things.
Yeah, I like that approach. You're cutting out all the mess that ad tech creates in the middle, and you go straight for the objective,
so what?
Which is driving sales. Yeah.
One of the first things I think we need to do is to break the silos. And that's maybe a cliche, but advertising today in broadcast, it's all within a broadcaster, all within sales house of a broadcaster. They manage everything.
Yeah.
The moment that you're going to do addressable, that's no longer the case, because broadcaster X is distributing over distributor A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And I think we really need to work together there, have partnerships to facilitate that, to make it easy. If you want to, like in Belgium, it's the situation if you have one national operator, which is us, Proximus, but then you have two very strong regional operators in the north and in the south. So that means that you at least have 3 distribution platforms where you want to bring your addressable content to. Now, if you have to ingest that content and create a campaign 3 times in a different way, that's not really going to facilitate the growth there. So it has to be made easy, it has to be transparent of the distribution platforms. And that's where we need to start working together. And it's beginning,
Yeah.
It's beginning, everybody realizes that. But it's a new way of working between companies who basically are competitors.
So this is really interesting because none of you mentioned kind of consortiums or alliances, with your $1 million, but again, you make a very good point in that this is absolutely necessary for the industry to actually work together, against, the big digital pure players. And so it's almost like we're adding to the catalysts that are required here. We need unified measurement and we need consortiums, and then we're driving more investment.
But you don't need a consortium, huh? You don't need a consortium.
Oh, sorry, collaboration.
Consortium is a dirty word, I think, but really you need to collaborate on those things. Make sure that your specifications are aligned.
Yeah, I think €1 million maybe doesn't help with a consortium, to be honest. But collaboration, absolutely. From our experience, we only launched Finecast a year and a half ago or so, but God, it was 4 years in the making to get to that point. So that was working with the entire ecosystem. We are part of Group M, but we definitely see that there's demand outside of Group M purely because we've established this position in the industry through our trading relationships, through working with the content owners and the distributors and working with long-term technology platform partners, etc., to build something that we could not have done on our own for sure. Everyone had to kind of open up a little bit to create this, and it's been for me quite an eye-opening experience coming into it and just seeing that level of collaboration.
And when you say everyone had to open up, where are the areas of collaboration that you found you're most proud of? Is it between you and publishers, or between you and tech companies, or?
All of the above, particularly with the broadcasters, right? I mean, that's a very special relationship that we have there, but it's a competitive relationship as well between each other. So there's got to be an element of trust into this, and that's where the partnerships element comes in. So, and you've got to build that trust over time. But so long as all parties see that there is some incremental benefit and value in it, and that this is driving things forward, and look beyond linear TV, VOD, etc., and that there is something a bit bigger than all of that, then that's a prize worth aiming for.
I just want to add a point to what Blair said, which is, I think, very interesting, is that we have a lot of proxies in order to get closer to the goals of the advertiser, actually, right? We have currencies, we have funnels, we have all that nice stuff. But in the end, what we want to do, right, is move from a proxy to actually deterministic knowing, okay, so why is that person, choosing the Coke instead of the Pepsi and stuff like that. So on top of the problems in the execution and the measurement, it's also about methodology and about knowing how human beings work and what affects them the best way to get your brand messages through, right? So it's actually, if you look at it, it's on all ends of the spectrum we have things to fix, right? Because if we're just fixing the execution, right, we still don't know if that proxy is the best way to get to the goal that the advertiser is looking for, which is, by the way, a funny thing, because our industry is changing like dramatically in the last 5 years, right? But the goals of the advertisers are the same since a couple of 100 years, right? You produce diapers, you want to sell them to people that need diapers. So what changes is everything between, but the goal stays the same, right?
So what you're really talking about there is the importance of also moving towards more deterministic means of judging advertising.
I'd say
or efficacy.
to move to understand it, to understand how the methodology and the deeper stuff works, and not only talk about the execution of it, because if you're running in the wrong direction, the best way to run won't help you because you're still running in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
I would just say yes, sort of, and I don't think we should fixate on one-to-one advertising, right? I think that doesn't need to be the only grail that we're chasing after. It's already here, right? One-to-household advertising is still a massive step forward, particularly as we're introducing more discrete audiences via overlaying data, etc. We've got to be a little bit careful, I think, that we don't obsess about some of the things that we've discovered through programmatic and digital that don't necessarily add up to a really, really healthy, positive ecosystem.
Yeah, I think we should focus on what's useful now rather than what's a fantasy of analytics and measurement to come in the future. Where is the information? I don't care if a model is deterministic or if it's probabilistic or if it's whatever else. Is it useful? And can we use that to make better decisions is what I think we should focus on.
So that's, you're talking about, you're moving towards the idea of what's easy and what's possible now, which I think is maybe...
Well, there's analytics for the 1%.
Yeah.
And then there's making it mass. And how do you take something that you could do if you had a team of data scientists and you're a massive brand, and then bringing that to the mass market and making TV more accessible? Because there's money to be spent, but TV is still quite difficult to buy if you are a medium-sized or smaller to medium-sized company, and removing those barriers to entry by showing that it works and not requiring some massive complicated onboarding to prove that it works means that we can open up the market, and that's got to benefit for the sell side and the buy side.
So I like this. We're starting to move away from the world of fantasy now to good, hard pragmatism. Like, what can we do now? So I'd like to maybe focus a bit more on the here and now for the next 5 minutes or so. I will just say, by the way, that in about 5 minutes, I'm going to start looking to the audience for some questions. So please start preparing, and we'll get back to you in a moment. So I kind of get the feeling that you're maybe saying that unified measurement is a bit of a fantasy for at least the next year or two. What do you think, in your respective fields, we should be doing in the here and now in the next 6 to 12 months in order to drive the ad-supported TV model forwards to grow revenue?
When I look at what we can do today from a technical side, so what we can do from a technical point of view, and if I look at what the broadcasters are doing, there's not a lot of innovation there at that side. So you just have a linear program, you have a chunk of advertising in every program, and you send it out, and you don't do anything with it. Okay, you can replace, you can personalize, but what if somebody is watching that in a replay form? You can be very creative with those advertisements. You don't have to use what you have sent. And those are things that you can do today. You could say, for example, if there is a 1 hour show, we have 3 advertising blocks, and you view it in replay, we throw out 2 blocks of those original ones. We put 1 block in there where we make sure that people are going to watch it. We make it addressable. That's just an example. I don't say we have to do that, but there are possibilities that today can be implemented. But I don't see a lot of things like that coming from the sales houses and broadcasters.
I have to disagree on this.
Okay, perfect.
I'm sorry,
Great.
representing broadcasters and sales. I think that there are a lot of innovations that we are looking at in our 12 markets, right, across Europe. I mean, the thing is this, you know, what we tend to forget also from a sales perspective, from the sales side, is making great content is super hard. Like, if I talk to people in my organization that actually do content, right, finding a way to create content that engages masses, that gets like 2 million people in front of the television to stay there, it's pretty hard. So they are very cautious about how do we you know, slice and dice that content with advertising. So therefore, fully up for innovations that go along the way you said of less advertising, more targeted, more fitting also to the environment, because the context also makes a difference. And we're talking to advertisers and agencies about the value of creatives, of your spots, and how you need to place them in the best way possible against our content to have the greatest effect, right? I mean, every econometric modeling has the same outcome. The spot, the creative, is the one single value in it that has the greatest effect, right? So I would say there are a lot of innovations around across Europe that are coming from the broadcaster side that are pushed by the content people as well, and that we're trying to implement also for the advertisers and agencies. Because if they don't adapt it, right, our ad-supported model won't work. So.
Harry, how do you feel about this, representing the money?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm slightly torn. I think when we talk about innovation, we've got to be careful it's not innovation for innovation's sake, that there is serious incremental value in that innovation for all stakeholders, not least the viewer. Because if we piss the viewer off through innovations, then it's not going to go well long term. So, you know, having come from digital into the world of TV, you know, one of the things that kind of clearly recognize, and just as a person, right, as a consumer, is that the TV ad experience is a very elegant one. It's a very nice one. You know, it's not really criticized, which is more than could be said for a lot of other advertising channels. So I think that's something that we do not want to mess with, right? Unless that there is some serious incremental value that is recognized, including by the viewer. So anything that deters from the experience or overly disrupts the experience is, by default, I would say, to be avoided.
And Blair and Mike, you know, we are talking about what's possible in the next 6 to 12 months. We haven't really touched that much on either the programmatic trading or audience-based buying. Do you think that is low-hanging fruit in the next 6 to 12 months for broadcasters?
Depends which market you're in. I mean, we work in 70 markets. The US is ahead in some areas. Europe's ahead in other areas. And you can do it, but the supply of media is limited, and therefore the prices are high, because as soon as you indicate that you want to target anything, the sales side knows that you're interested in it and then puts the price up, so it becomes arbitrage. So do you arbitrage on that basis, or do you arbitrage on a wider demographic? So it depends on the size of the media buy. But you can do it now. Again, depends where you sit in that stack of maturity.
I'm with Blair on the fact it is kind of here now. I think one of the things that hasn't helped it's kind of in the weeds, but there's still this fight over what's the common ID that's going to be the thing that translates people's audiences across different platforms we can all agree on, and actually, you know, Facebooks and Googles, etc., have their own, but then on the side that's really meant to be working with the advertisers, the buy side, they've come out and we've all in dataxu in the past, not anymore through the work through the consortium. I know it's a dirty word, you don't like it, but fundamentally the collaboration of just going to that the advertising ID, a singular view of it that we don't control, that you know, an Adobe doesn't control, that the Trade Desk shouldn't control. It should just be a common language that the whole world speaks, and that could be something that could be done in the 6 months just to make buying easier, because that's one of the things that we have kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit here, made things hard to buy, and fair play to the Facebooks of the world. They've looked at television and they've seen the amazing thing that television has that just been unrivaled anywhere else, which is this scale thing, and they said, okay, well, we now have some scale, we'll call it Facebook audiences. You can get all your scale, but it's your data that you've already paid for, and we can now make that investment work really hard. And TV sort of there, but and Facebook are taking a load of money.
Nobody owns that space yet. Nobody owns the identity management space, certainly not at a global level. I mean, you mentioned LiveRamp already, and they're probably preeminent in the US, certainly, and coming into Europe as well. But of course, as soon as you have unified identity resolution, what it means is that effectively your reach goes down. Because previously I thought that person was the different person to that person. I discovered they're the same person, so now I have lower reach and higher frequency, and the market prefers reach to frequency. Therefore, for the sell side, actually, it represents a risk. You know, so, and then the premium pricing goes up and lower quality inventory goes down. So there's all manner of stuff that's going to happen off the back of that.
But and your results go down. Can you go, oh, well, only half of people converted? No, that one person you reached converted. You just didn't know it was the other person the other time. And so I think, and that's why a lot of the heat was on this idea of measurement. And we've got to get this measurement bit right, because without a view of who the person is, the people are, the audience are, the rest of it just becomes very vague to the point of being misleading.
It's all a very confusing, interconnected mess of innovation, really, isn't it? Do we have any questions from the audience on trying to untangle this web? A lady at the back there, got a mic just coming. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Katie Jones from Beeswax. In the online display space, there's been a huge amount of focus in recent year or so about the value chain or the supply chain and different partners, really around a focus on sort of how people are taking margin and are they really adding value for that. I'd love to hear from the panel on sort of in the TV space and advanced TV especially, does the percentage of media model work? Or when you're talking to partners, are you looking at investigating other models? And if so, what sort of models are you looking at?
Brilliant, that's a great question. Who wants to take that first? Harry, maybe? You're the obvious.
Why?
You're the obvious culprit.
Why would you ask that? I think there's I think within digital and TV, again, there will be different routes to market, right? And I think what we've got to get to on digital is very advanced in that in terms of the choice of routes to market. TV or addressable TV isn't. I would say that it remains particularly value-based rather than transparency-based right now. But I think as it evolves, I think different models and options will open up.
Daniel, maybe give us a broadcast perspective. Do you feel like too much value is being taken out of the value chain at the moment, or is it about right? Do you think there's going to be more consolidation?
So I think it's a good point. You know, in digital, we all created a bit of a mess that, from our perspective and point of view, will not happen or should not happen in TV or advanced TV ecosystem, right? So, and that mess we created in digital, just applying that to this, you know, the living room, the big screen, doesn't make any sense for anybody, I think, right? So we have to be very cautious and careful who's contributing value to, at the end of the day, the advertiser who spends the money, right? How much money is going into actually the goals that the advertiser is trying to get at with the money he's spending with us, right? And everybody who contributes in between to make that goal, you know, to get closer to that goal, deserves money, that's right. But I think from our perspective, what we're going to do is that we're going to be very careful on how much do we do on our own, right? Where do we need to collaborate with operators, with agencies, with former competitors to make sure this mess doesn't appear again in our main or core medium TV.
Yeah.
Right.
And Gert, do you have any comments on this? Because you're in an interesting position in the middle.
We're the new kid in the value chain,
Yeah.
basically. In the past we didn't see anything of it, but today we are investing in our network to enable addressable. Yeah? So that costs money, and there has to be a return on that. And today we are looking at what is the value of that addressability, because it's not only the technology that we put in place to enable it, it's also our data.
Yeah.
Our data, the data of our customers that we have. So we know who is out there, and we know how to reach them. We can do ad decisioning based on that data. It's also a way to monetize the data via a service. So yeah, it's all brand new, and we really have to look at where is our place in that value chain. We have a lot of discussions with the sales agencies.
I agree. If there's not value in it, then we might as well all go home. But I think going back to that whole ecosystem and collaboration point of view, a vast amount of investment needs to go into this to make it work. That money is not growing on trees. Clients need to value that, and they need to pay for that. Advertisers, marketers, right? That's just the reality.
And Mike and Blair, obviously you represent third parties who are taking value out of the chain, but I assume driving results.
Putting it in, I dare you.
Well, taking value but adding value. Now, I'm not going to ask you to comment on your own companies because I don't think that would be fair. So instead I want to ask you to comment on your competitors. Do you think your competitors are very transparent with the value that they take out of the chain and how much they bring, or do you think there is still some obscurity going on where people are taking far too much margin amongst your competitive set?
I'll go first. Competitor will remain nameless, probably for legal reasons. So there's something coming out in programmatic advertising, this idea of bid shading, which is fundamental.
New word.
Bid shading is essentially a practice whereby smart computer algorithms are trying to work out whether or not you can still win a bid at a lower price, and as things move to first price auctions, it becomes more and more important, this idea of like, could I have won that for 50 cents less, 30 euro cents less? Now, to my mind, and the way dataxu works, and it's why I picked this example specifically, we would basically, we don't make any margin. If the algorithm works that out and makes a saving on behalf of the client, the money just doesn't get spent. The client gets to keep that money and either use it for marketing, keep spending it on the campaign, whatever. There are some competitors out there who say, well, actually, we're going to keep half the difference. We've made a saving for you. Our technology has been smarter than average. You've made X. What they're not really saying is you could have made 2X, but that's our return on the investment. And to my mind, that's the whole point of the algorithm in the first instance. There shouldn't be this extra cut that gets taken out in the middle. That should go back to, that's the benefits of technology advance that should be shared all the way across the chain back to the person with the budget.
And also, who knew about bid shading already? Quite a lot of you, because I guess, of course, in the world of TV, bidding is slightly less ubiquitous. So
and we don't do real-time bidding. I mean, actually, I come from a background of working in algo trading in hedge funds and all that kind of stuff, so I know how nefarious and horrible it can be, but our company doesn't, we're pure measurement, so it's kind of hard for us and I guess our competitors to try and game it, because if we're not honest, then people won't use it, and be in the value chain rather than supply chain, I would say, and I guess we charge some money and we tell you, and you can see that if you do what we tell you to do, then your results get better. If they don't get better, you're not going to stay with us, and it's the same for our competitors. Yeah. So our part of the value chain is very much baked in against performance rather than hiding it. And that's kind of unique to our situation, I guess.
Yeah, I would hope that this kind of bid shading practice is really less prevalent within the TV space. We're in a premium supply constrained environment. We don't bid. From a group M point of view, we buy. We negotiate and we buy. We don't bid. So cutting out various middlemen, exchanges, etc. is very much part of our policy.
So I think we're all agreeing that the panel is comprised of saints, not sinners, and that the TV world is very salubrious, and it's just the dodgy display world and programmatic and Facebook and Google who are just stealing everybody's money. Is that right? What a surprising conclusion. Do we have another question from the audience?
In the back.
Oh, at the back, yes, sorry. Hopefully get a mic to you. I was dazzled.
Thanks. Koza Kanji from VOD Professional. The title of the panel is Exploring the Innovations That Can Safeguard TV Advertising Budgets. The crucial word there, I think, is safeguard. Can anything, even all your best innovations, actually safeguard TV advertising budgets? Or actually, are we looking at managing decline?
It's a very pessimistic question.
Well,
who wants to take that?
I would jump on that question. I would say that there's one essential thing here that we can do, and that's really our job, is to create a great product, right? And with product, I don't mean a great advertising product or product for advertiser, but a product for the consumer, right? Mm-hmm. So as much as I love to bash Facebook and Google and the likes, we have to admit that the guys have an amazing product, because billions of people using it every second of the day. So our focus will very much be on what is the best product in the future for video on the big screen, on other screens, that we can deliver to consumers, possible consumers, because where we make money is to establish a connection between a possible consumer and an advertiser that wants the money of the consumer, right? So in order to do that, we need to have the best product that people actually like to spend time with. And I think that will be the key for the future in terms of not only safeguarding, but growing our business from a broadcast point of view.
I totally agree with that. I mean, all independent studies, apart from those commissioned by Google and Facebook, show that TV advertising has the highest ROI. So one would assume that if the product is as great as Facebook and Google's is in terms of the actual user experience and the real-time analytics and everything like that, then surely budgets will go up.
Yeah, and addressable has the opportunity to add to the linear TV budgets, make it incremental. That's really exciting. That's something that we're seeing a lot of at the moment.
Yeah. I guess one of the reasons I chose one of my fantasy investments as being improving the user experience and customer experience is because that is the product. I mean, people don't watch TV for the adverts. They watch it because the content's good and it's interesting and engaging and all these things. And if that isn't maintained, then people will go somewhere else. So that's what you have to do first. But then it's about arming the advertising side and the sales side with the tools they need to make them able to compete in a world which is much more evolved than it was 10 years ago.
I think the point about this idea of safeguarding the budget, there's an undeniable set of shifts in audience viewing behavior about the way different types of audiences are looking at different types of things, and in some instances for traditionally supported ad-supported models, that bit of your audience consumption is kind of in decline. I think the panel's view here is that firstly, that the measurement part would actually get to a point of redefining this what is television, and fundamentally, because some of that where attention is going is also television, it's just on a different screen. And secondly, that the application of data, the evolution of the audience buying in this addressable TV market can more than make up for kind of drop-offs in what would be just the natural kind of audience-based view in a declining share of eyeballs.
Perfect. Well, I think we have time for one final question, if there's one from the audience. John.
This is a bit more simple. It's about the pause advertising that we've been hearing about, where you pause your DVR and an advert pops up. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer to me, but I'm not sure whether the industry like it or not. So what's your view on that?
I'm not in TV, so I'll give the TV people who are actually sharing this content time to think. But to my mind, one of the reasons that TV advertising is so compelling and the results from things like the Ubiquity study, things like Binet and Field come in is that you've got user attention on that screen, and there's engagement well beyond the engagement that exists in other forms of advertising. And there's probably a reason they press pause. Yeah. And it isn't to look at a blank screen, and I'd say therefore you'll see a set of results when, if this happened and then 5 years later you're looking at the data, you'd see a set of results that did not look like TV effectiveness at all.
Yeah, it's not audio-visual storytelling. It's just...
Yeah. If I hit pause, there's a reason for it, right? So it's again going back to the root of the goals and also the behavior of the human being. So if I hit pause, I do something else effectively. So if I show an advertising in that moment, the probability is pretty high that actually that person won't see it. So. Yeah.
But perhaps, Gert, do you have a different view? Because of course you are in control of the pause user.
We are in control of the pause button and fast forward button. Target advertising is basically a B2B product. Yeah. So we're not selling to our audience or consumers, we're selling to partners, to broadcasters, that product. But it is managed by the consumer business unit. Yeah. There's a very good reason for that, and that's user experience. Yeah. So we don't want, our customers, they pay for the TV product. Yeah. They pay us, and we want to give them the best possible experience. If that could be without advertising, great, let's do it without advertising. But okay, that's not the case. We see our customers, they don't want advertising because they do fast forward on replay. Yeah. And let's search for a balance where the consumer is happy with what he gets, and broadcasters or sales houses can make some revenue. That's why I say earlier on, maybe try different business models. Yeah? Thinking consumer experience, keeping consumer experience in mind. So pausing and popping up an ad, our competition has done it. We decided not to do it. We got the demand because we don't really see the consumer, the user experience growing, and that's a very important one.
Yeah, it's about making advertising better, but not at the cost of user experience.
But basically, the thing we need to avoid is that a consumer, the moment he watches something non-linear, that he hits that fast forward button. That's something you have to avoid. And you can block it, but you have to make sure, that he doesn't do it, that he watches the advertising. Because that's what's happening, eh? That's what's happening.
I think it's ultimately also about, does the consumer realize the value of his or her attention, right? Because at the moment, there's a lot of offers on subscription-based, right? That is essentially saying, okay, my attention is too valuable. I don't want to do advertising, right? But on the other hand, the business model, is that sustainable? I don't know. Who thinks that Netflix can keep up the price they're having at the moment for the next 10 years? I don't think so. It's not sustainable, right? So there has to be a balance at one point between what the value of the attention of the consumer is and advertising that basically pays for it, or another alternative for the consumer, which is subscription-based, which we are looking into very heavily because we believe that there's a space for regional content and regional subscription-based content that is beyond Netflix and Amazon Prime. Because if you look at it, the content that is really successful on the most successful medium, the television screen, it's local content. It's not the big US shows anymore. That declined by half between 2012 and 2017.
Local content can be expensive to produce, of course. And I think there's this whole immature area of kind of pricing analytics from the sales side.
Definitely.
What happens if you take a series out of SVOD and put it into AVOD? What does that do? Does it benefit you? What happens if you do vice versa? And what is the value of a person? And it's just, I think we used to know that in old TV land, but I don't think we know that now, and I'm not sure anybody's doing a great job. Maybe that's another business to invest in. Something in the pricing analytics side, or yield maximization.
I think we have just got onto a new, very interesting line of discussion, which is AVOD versus SVOD. But unfortunately, we're about 5 to 10 minutes running over. So I think I'm going to have to actually call it a day now, and we'll have to carry that on in the coffee break later. But yeah, I'd just like to say thank you and invite a round of applause for a great panel. Thank you very much, everybody.